Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Hunt Lift Eat podcast, brought to you by Hunt Lift Eat Official. I'm here on the same coast, same time zone as the one and only Cox himself. What's up, dude?
Not much, man. Just hanging out in Tennessee. You're actually only like 3 hours away. Seems criminal that we're not getting together in person.
After this podcast wraps up, I could be there.
Do it. Just tell Robin he can take a quick trip north. I'll break my sobriety if you drive north tonight.
No way. No way, dude. That's really tempting.
It's actually my first day as a civilian too.
Yeah. Hey. Congrats, dude. How's that?
It's good, man. I mean, I'm paycheck stopped yesterday, so that sucks. But I've been on that terminal leave, not having to work and be able to grow a beard and get paid. It was kind of a sweet deal. Now the paycheck stopped, but no, it's good, man. I'm stoked to really be able to apply all the time and effort into what we're doing here. So it's gonna be good.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's been a big spring for Hunt Lift Eat, and we've made some really cool connections across expo season and archery 3D shoot season, and that's kind of the name of the game right now. Just meeting folks, shaking hands, and chasing events around the country, man. And our guest tonight, we got a team member. We got Chan.
What's going on, y'all?
The man.
Yeah, we met each other shaking babies and kissing hands.
You met the boys at NWTF?
Yeah, so I'd actually seen you guys at GAO. And I kept wanting to go approach your booth, but there's no walking in that convention center while that show's going.
Yeah, that's crazy one.
And then at NWTF, we were slow down, and that poacher you guys got on your team, Carrie, just jumping out into the aisles and getting members as fast as he can reach them, man. That dude is a preacher.
Yeah.
Dude. When you say that poacher, I start going through the list. I'm like, whoa. I thought we're supposed to be on the up and up now.
I was so sure we were doing better.
It's in the past. Yeah, dude. Carrie, our membership coordinator, he's a freaking man, dude. And yeah, he's direct. He doesn't beat around the bush.
No, man. He had people pushing the ground like it was the craziest thing. It was always like, do you have what it takes? I'm not sure. Drop. You just see dudes responding, just hitting the deck, man. Just pat. I was like, all right. I'm not about to do that, but I appreciate the enthusiasm. You know,
get a little taste of Green Beret himself.
Yeah, he's an intense dude. You give him a task, he's like, got it, tracking, and then you got to go. Sometimes you got to be really deliberate with like what you tell him, because he'll. But no, he's a stud, man, and he's been a huge boost for us, and having somebody dedicated in that role, something we've needed for a long time. So he's definitely been effective and brought in some great folks over the last few months.
Yeah, dude, and the way he just preached the message of the crew overall and what you guys stand for, and trying to be able to build that community with, like-minded people, and just, tailoring a community to just help hunters that want to hunt all over the country, or people that are new to hunting, or people that just want to be able to fit into this lifestyle, find a brotherhood that they could be a part of and get that mentorship either with one another, or even just help other people. If they've already established something, they can help others into it. Because, as hunters, we start killing stuff and it's cool. But then you get to take someone to go kill their first animal, and you're like reliving that moment vicariously through them. And you're like, that's amazing. I need to do that again.
And that's the cool part, man. Because like you, based on our limited, conversations that we've had over a very important event in my life in the last couple months, and we'll jump into that. But like, you say you guys, but like, this is your team too. You know what I mean? Like, you're part of the team. And so, it's you too, because you understood the message right away, and you're like, oh, this is it. I want to be a part of this community. And that's kind of the name of the game across the country. And you never know who you're going to meet, or people's backgrounds or experience levels or whatever, whether it's fitness or hunting or cooking wild game or whatever's drawing you to the community. Right. That might be a cool question for you. Like, what kind of stood out to you about that? Just kind of curious.
My biggest thing is just from, my background at Taurus is just like, I started at Taurus just as a regular employee, and eventually got into marketing and started traveling more and getting to meet more people. And the one commonality I found was personalities are the same, experience can differ, right? But if you have someone's personality who's already conducive to something specific, you can teach everything else. All the other stuff will come into it. So it's cool. So when you can gather a group of personalities and like-minded figures, regardless of their experience levels, they're all going to be devoted to the task or the project at hand with the same level of intensity and interest. So when you've limited that pool to people who, like, for one, found your message, heard it, and it reached them, and they jumped in, that right there just cut the whole, we'll call it hiring process in half, right? Because whether you're finding a friend, a new hunting partner, a new life partner, that's what it is, the hiring process. You're trying to figure out what roles they can fit in and what roles they can't. And usually that takes a long time. With the way you guys have been setting up your team membership and getting people in, and just even at the booth, when you have 5, 6 dudes that have all come out from different states and come there together, maybe they're meeting each other for the first time there, or they've been working with each other for a while. The personalities just are conducive to bringing in additional personalities like that into the group. So that alone, when I saw it, I was like, this is special. I could find a version of me out west. I could find a version of me in Alaska. I could find a version of me down in Florida. And we can get doing what I know I do with a complete stranger just because we're going to have a good time.
Hell yeah. That's awesome.
You don't know this, Chan, but that's exactly what Luke needed to hear this week.
It's been one of those weeks for sure. So it's always good. And that was like, when Nick, when we talked to her the first time, I think I was driving down to Louisiana, and it was cool just to, somebody, not the same exact industry, but the firearms industry obviously is pretty hand in hand with the hunting and outdoor industry. And, you were like telling me, he's like, I think this is on your roadmap. And you're like, you're talking through it. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It's cool from the perspective of trying to build something when you meet folks that can see that vision, especially see it, without a lot of, explanation. So it's kind of that reaffirmation that we're on the right track and we're doing something correctly. Because sometimes you just feel like what did I say to this week, Carter? Just sometimes days it feels like you're just standing there and a line of dudes are walking up to kick you in the balls.
Yeah.
That's what building a company feels like sometimes. But that price is definitely worth paying when you compare it to what we have with the memberships and the connections and meeting cool ass folks across the country from all these different backgrounds, and I love it. So I'm glad to have you along, and I just appreciate everything that Taurus has done for us, which I'm sure we'll get into, and then some of the stuff we've got on the horizon as well. But
yeah, man, I just want to touch base real quick on that. Like, I tried to be an entrepreneur once upon a time because the internet always romanticized the idea of it. It wasn't for me. I'm better at making other people money. That's just my thing. But seeing dudes get after it and do it, and, like, for one, like, as far as you've taken this company so far and what you've done with it, and like, think about how many people can barely get 5 people to listen to them. And we're up to how many members right now?
yeah, just shy of 500, somewhere in that range.
Dude, that in and of itself, it's gonna suck a lot.
Yeah.
That's what owning a business consists of. Like, it's just extremely hard work. You've got 1,000 bosses, 1,000 people to answer to, and it's not easier. You don't have more time. Your schedule will not open up; it'll just get smaller. But that's part of it. Like, everybody carries their cross, and you walk with it.
100%, man. I love that. But yeah, man, let's roll it back a little bit. Let's get a little bit about you. We'll talk about the business and Taurus and all that in a little bit. But, like, what's your background? How did you come up in the outdoors and hunting? Was that something you discovered later? And then what led you into the firearms industry?
So I'm originally from Miami, like the city of Miami. I grew up in Little Havana, which is like just a little ghetto town in Miami-Dade County. And growing up, like, well, we didn't have I didn't have any families that were into guns. Any idea of guns usually had to do with, like, gang banging and stuff like that. So it wasn't a thing. But I remember walking into Dolphin Mall when I was probably like 7 or 8 years old and seeing them building the first Bass Pro Shops. And there was a dude on a magazine because they had just gotten, like, the wood arches, right? They still hadn't even set up the green tin roofs, none of that. I remember seeing the dude hanging off a tree in a tree saddle with a bow in his hand. And I was like, I'm going to do that someday. Like, that's going to be me. And ever since then, like, I'd watch YouTube videos on wilderness survival and all that stuff, which didn't make any sense because I lived in a concrete jungle. So none of it was applicable. So I could only imagine, like, what it would look like to, like, set up, rabbit snares when in my neighborhood all we have is freaking pigeons, and feral cats. So it was like, none of it made sense until once I got older. I'd been working in the gun industry for a while on the, like, I want to say commercial side, right? Like, just gun stores, gun ranges and stuff like that. I started working at Taurus, and they tell us like my second week working there, like the company's moving to South Georgia. And in my head, it clicked. Like all those memories, everything I remembered of what I wanted to do, I was like, this is my opportunity. Like, I'm gonna go to South Georgia. I'm gonna become a deer hunter. Like, I'm gonna start killing deer. I'm gonna find any animal that's four-legged that I can drop. I'm gonna do it. Prior to that, I had done some pig hunting and stuff, which isn't really hunting. You guys went pig hunting in South Florida. It's far from a hunt. You just walk out places and wait for them to walk into the open, and you smoke them. In our case, a lot of my buddies and me, we chase them in like sugarcane fields and stuff like that. But it wasn't. It was never hunting. You know, it's a type of hunting. Florida boys love that. Like all the crackers down there are into it. They don't even like. I know a lot of the dudes down there don't even kill pigs. Like they'll bar them out. They'll just catch them, cut their nuts off, chop a piece of their ear, and let them go, and then just shoot them a couple of weeks later. Like their thing's just like an adrenaline fix. It's not really like when you're tracking deer and building your sets and doing all the other things and setting up on them, and then hoping that everything you've done was correct, and now you could put one down. So that's kind of that was my beginning.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So how old were you when you went on your first non-pig hunt, like your first deer hunt?
I was 24.
What was that first hunt like? Were you by yourself? Did you have some buddies helping?
No, so I was completely by myself. There's a WMA, maybe like 4 miles from my house. That's all of like, I think it has to be like 50 acres or 60 acres large.
In Georgia?
In Georgia, in South Georgia. And I was like terrified of walking into the woods, which makes no sense because like we'd park in a back alley in downtown Miami to save $15 in parking. But then I'm afraid to walk into the woods where there's like absolutely nothing that would hurt me, especially in South Georgia. Like it's just one of those things that doesn't make sense. So every day I would go and sit down on the same spot because I had put a trail camera out there I bought at Walmart, and I had no one helping me. I had been shooting a bow for a couple of months at that point that I had gotten for free from one of my buddies, and I had bought some like Muzzy broadheads, some Muzzy trocars from Walmart, and a tree climber. I was like, I'm ready to go. We're rocking and rolling, So I put that camera out there, and I got a picture of two does walking through there, and it was the most exhilarating moment of my life. I was like, I found deer. This is it.
Yeah.
Like it's gonna happen. And I sat out in that set every day, probably, and like I'm not even exaggerating to you, every day. Like every day, every morning and again, I was a new hunter, so I didn't know about, in the mornings you might want to sit till 11. You don't really want to like cut your day short at like 9 o'clock. So I'd like sit there in the mornings till 9 o'clock, then get down, and I'd get off of work at 4, race out to the woods, and just sit there till it got dark. And I did that every day for about 3 months. And on the day that I least expected it, I'm like literally like my feet are kicked up on my rails of my tree climber. I'm watching a YouTube video, and I was just having like a shitty day at work. And I was like, man, I don't want to sit at home and just think about the bullshit I'm dealing with at work. I'm gonna go sit out in the woods. So I get up this tree. I'm not even that far off the ground, honestly, because I didn't want to make that much of an effort. It was not like one of these days where I was really trying to hunt. I just wanted to get out in the woods. So I'm sitting up there, and from the corner of my eye, I just see like something brown moving. And I could just feel my heart drop. And I was like, oh shit, that's a deer. This is happening, like this is really happening. So now like I'm throwing, and mind you, I'm wearing a Haley Strategic micro rig because my background's all tactical stuff. So now I'm just like trying to bridge over whatever gear I already have to use for hunting. So I've got my gun on a chest rig, and then I've got like kind of like an admin pouch. So I'm dropping my phone into my admin pouch, and I'm like trying not to like ND my flashlight or anything. I'm just like, oh shit. And I grab my bow, and the second I get up and draw on the deer, and I'm like 50 yards from the road. Like I can see the road from where I'm at. Because again, I'm still afraid to like really walk deep into the woods because I don't really know what I'm doing. And when I draw my bow back, my arrow falls off the rest and ends up going through my sleeve of my shirt. And I was like, oh shit. And a motorcycle happened to pass by at that exact same moment. And it just stopped the doe dead in her tracks, and she was just staring at the motorcycle. So I like weave the arrow back out of my sleeve, knock it back on my bow, pull back again. I end up shooting the doe at 37 yards, quartering away.
Come on.
Hell yeah.
She ran about like 60 yards or something like that, piled up on a neighboring property. I dragged her out. stuffed her in the back of my Kia Soul because that's what, that's the whip I had.
My kind of guy. Come on.
And I'm calling a deer processor that I've been like trying to like sweeten up with a little bit, like just so I can get on a hunt. Because like one thing I noticed was I kept asking people about trying to get on a hunt, trying to get on a hunt, trying to get on a hunt, and nobody really took me serious. And now as a hunter, I kind of get it, because a lot of people claim that they want to hunt and they want to go out and do it and stuff. But if you take someone to go just shoot their first animal without really getting to like put the work in to suffer some, they don't appreciate it as much. So like they kill a deer and then it's like it's just a story they can tell their friends. Like, yeah, I killed a deer once, it was all right. So like I figured that's why a lot of people were like that. So I just ignored it, but I wanted it. So I call a deer processor and I'm like, hey man, I just killed a monster doe, which she wasn't. She was just a regular doe, nothing crazy. And he's like, all right, man, just pull up. There's a freezer in the back. Push her into the freezer. Send me your tag number or whatever, and we're good to go. I was like, all right. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, man, I gotta get blood on myself. Like, I gotta get blood on myself. Like, this is part of the process. And as I'm pulling this doe out of the car, I'm pulling her hind legs out first instead of like neck out. So her head just whips clean out of the car. And I just get blood from like the top of my head all the way down to my chest, all in my mouth, everywhere, dude. I'm just like, this is the worst. And I got ticks crawling all inside my Kia, and I was like, I need to figure out something better. But that was like the whole experience, and it got me hooked ever since. Like,
That's sick, dude. I love that. That's an awesome first deer story.
Yeah, it's one of the better ones we've heard. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's the best. And dude, there's a lot to unpack with that story, man. Like, there's a lot. There's definitely a barrier to entry when you start deer hunting like that, man. If you don't have a mentor, if you don't have somebody helping you, right? Like, what kind of stand do I just from all the gear side of things, man? What kind of stand do I need? Where do I need to position it? Like, how do I read the wind? Like, where are these deer going to be feeding? What do they eat? What time of year is it? And hunting by yourself, especially on a WMA, like for 3 months, like you said, like day in and day out, like that takes a lot of commitment that honestly a lot of hunters don't have. You know what I mean? Like, not a lot of people will get after it like that. Especially like a lot of fellow tree stand hunters here on the East Coast. It's sometimes it's just like optional and subjective. It's like, oh, the weather's good, I'll go. We're like, not good. Nah, I'm not gonna go. So that like stick with itness, that's a huge testament to your character and your desire and drive. And I think that speaks to both of us and definitely everybody listening, man. Like, whatever it takes that's what I'm gonna do,
by any means, bro. Like,
yeah.
That's all, by any means.
And it's always better than sitting at home, you know what I mean? Like, always, whether you see something or not.
You can't kill them from the couch.
That's true.
I mean, we've talked about the story before on the podcast, but when Carter and I were hunting fourth rifle in Colorado this year for elk and muley, and we are kind of screwed on elk because where they were, we couldn't see because there was fog had come in. So we decided we were just going to focus on mule deer. But the entirety of camp, like we were doing a drop camp, so we were accessing the public from the private that we were like staying at the cabin, but we weren't doing any we didn't have guides. But all the guys that were guided, like they didn't go out that day because the weather was shit. And
they drove from like West Virginia and Minnesota and like all
paid way more than we did. We paid essentially like a trespass. They paid a full guided hunt. And yeah, they
didn't go out because it was cold or whatever.
It was snowing. It was dumping snow. But I ended up killing not a big buck, but I mean, for me, at that point, I'd killed one forky muley. So it was a great buck for where I'm at in my experience in mule deer. And when we came back and like, we're looking at everybody, I'm like, if you go out, you might kill one, like you never know. And then sure enough, that snow actually pushed the elk on the property. And so there was a bunch of elk the next day out there, but it was just too often. I think we look for the excuses, right? Like, oh, the weather's bad. There's no use in going out. The biggest buck that my cousin Perry's ever killed on our property back home was in a driving rainstorm. The deer don't give a shit. Like they live in that. Like, it's not like they're going to under the porch to hide out, right? Like they're still moving, and whether the weather's bad or you haven't seen anything, like just stick with itness is really what gets it done. And people just don't see that, right? Like they don't see they might see some success, right? If you have a really good season. And I've been saving all my unfilled tags for a couple of years now, because like whenever I do have one of those seasons where it just all kind of comes together, which at some point in my life hopefully happens, I want to like dump out that bag of tags and like have a video of it and be like, this is the amount of like experience and failure that went into having this season or this success. Because I think people listen to Rogan and Cam and they get a skewed version, right? Like those Rogan kind of had the fast track, right? Because he was hunting with Ranella and Cam. But you know, Ranella and Cam have put in a lot of miles, a lot of days, a lot of hours in the backcountry doing what they do to get to the point that they're at, to be able to have the rates of success that they do. But people see it and they're like, oh, I can just go out and hunt and I'll kill something. Or I had a guy just recently tell me like, oh, I don't hunt with a rifle because rifle hunting is easy. I'm like, I can tell you're not really a hunter by that comment, because I hunt with a bow and a rifle and neither are easy, really, you know, and it just, yeah. So I dig that for sure, that going out every day for 3 months. I've never done that.
Dude, so I made that comment once before, and this was like early on in my hunting career, like really early. Like, I mean, early enough to where like I didn't really consider myself a hunter yet, you know. But in my head, I was just thinking like, man, I'm knocking things down at 80 yards with this ball all day, holding super tight groups. Like, if I see it, it's dead. You know, we're good. And then you find yourself in that position, and you're like, every mistake that can possibly happen, from one of the bands on your expandable broadhead breaking, and you didn't notice it until you just drew that bow, and now you just have like that one hanging blade. And now do you send it? Or do you just sit there and watch your buck walk away? You know, like and you can't anticipate those things. You can't really teach or explain those things. Like, you can only gain them from experience. Like what you were talking about, the tree stands, where I remember so many mornings where I'd wake you know, or I'd wake up. No, we're awake on this tree, right? Like when the sun would come up, and I'd be like at a full angle facing down on the tree, you know, or I climb too high, and now when I stand up on my stand, my seat and like top portion are just doing this back and forth. And I spend the next 3 hours building the courage to climb a little further down to safety, because I just felt panic for the first time up in a tree, you know? Like little things like that. You can't make that stuff up. Like, you can try to explain it to someone, but like until you go out there and experience that, you don't know. Hunting's just that, and that entry fee, like you're talking about, like just getting that entry fee in. For one, I think earning it's important, right? It's kind of skewed perspective when you hunt from not with a guide, but when you're hunting like these big properties that have been managed, and you know they've named their bucks, and they've tailored all their deer with special supplements and all that stuff. And I'm not kicking any of those guys, because at the end of the day, you either pay for hunting in your time or with money. You know, if you don't have the time to scout and do all the other stuff, then like, you know, next best thing is hunting those big pieces of land and trying to get the biggest buck you can get. And that in and of itself takes some skill, right? You're sitting there and you're having to know how to judge deer, judge rack sizes, and through experience, you can find out that you just spend, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 on a 120 score buck, or you know, you shot the Boone and Crockett, but you don't know until you spent $5,000 on some dinks, and then you realize, like, you know, this is a big one. So I don't bash those guys either, but it's not as easy as the internet makes it seem, by far. Like, we don't have those nice open, you know, pines that you can just see for hundreds of yards on. It's as thick as thick can be. The trees aren't perfect. You spend the first quarter of your morning, if you didn't do your due diligence scouting, looking for the right tree to be able to mount your stand on. You know, things like that. It's just different, and it's what makes up the activity. You know.
So one of the things I love about hunting is how, no matter how experienced I might be on paper, I always still make fucking stupid mistakes. I always still learn something every hunt. Like gear is something that I should know very well. 11 years as an infantryman, been hunting for, I don't know, 15 or 20. And on this fourth rifle hunt, so I'd never hunted in the high country in Colorado in late November, just getting dumped on with feet of wet snow, I learned a ton, you know. And it's like, it just, every time I feel like might be getting a little bit of an ego where it's like, oh, I got this figured out, I get knocked right back down. Something kicks me in the nuts somewhere, and you're like, fuck, I really don't know anything. And think it's so good for at least for me and my personality and my psyche. Like, I got to make sure that something's knocking me down all the time, or I'll get too ahead of myself and stuff. And so the business does that, and then so does hunting, and I love it because it forces you to become a student and really have some humility. And I think that the guys that have it figured out, and some of them really do in certain species and areas, it's like, go somewhere else, man. Like, get out of that comfort zone, broaden your skill set. And that's not for everybody. Some guys like to be super specialized, and that's fine. But like, I want to be like the epitome of a generalist hunter, where I just have a very broad skill set across all of North America and all the species that have access to, and because I love to learn, and I love to fail. I mean, I don't love to fail, but you know what I mean? Like, I love to have that failure, which then leads to the success, because it's so much better in the long term. When you do, you got to earn it and work for it, and make a bunch of mistakes first. It's that much sweeter.
No, I agree. 100%.
Chan, Luke and I are not a good time in camp when we're failing. I'll just tell you that right now, but we do like to learn from every opportunity possible. And that is the cool thing, man. If you're not learning after every set, or every outing, or every opportunity or missed opportunity or wounded animal, or like whatever, every track, like, then you're not taking full advantage of the entire process, and you're missing out on so much, right? You're leaving so much on the table.
So actually, the person who's taught me how to hunt is some good old boy here from South Georgia. Like, he's not a lot of money, right? Like, just this dude is hunting with a 243. There was a house fire that he hit with just a Brillo pad, so he got all the rust off of it. Spray painted it. Ended up spray painting the action shut. So we ended up having to hit it with brake cleaner just to be able to break it off. And he had like an old Simmons or a Nikon scope that his dad had, and he's like, "Man, this is the best scope we've got, man. Like, this right here, my dad just killed a bunch of deer. He's put a bunch of bucks on the ground with this. Like, this will work." And I'm like, "You sure, man? Like, I work for a gun manufacturer, bro. I can get you a nicer scope, man." He's like, "I don't need that, man." He's like, "Well, shoot, man, I ain't shooting them that far anyways. I can use irons. It don't matter. We're good." And this kid, like, I don't think anybody taught him. I think it was just the fact that he was with other guys that knew what they were doing and been doing it for a long time. He knew what to look for. So we'd walk into place and it'd be like, "Man, there's a lot of deer coming through here." And I'm like, "What the hell is he looking at?" This is the first time we've ever walked into this public land. Like, this is either public land or core engineer land. We just like hacked our way through this, or used a boat to be able to come in on the water side, so we wouldn't have to, walk through so much thicket. And we'd walk in there, and he'd be like, "There's a bunch of deer walking through here, man. I think we should set up." And sure enough, they'd walk up. They'd walk in. It could have been anything, right? It could have been bucks or does or whatever. But then he'd be like, "All right, we'll do this for 2 more days, then we'll move. I think I know where the bucks are at." And he just dialed in. He told me about upside down leaves one day. He was like, "Man, you don't see all these upside down leaves here?" I looked at him like, "What the fuck is an upside down leaf?" How does that even work, bro? And he's like, "Well, what, the ground's wet, so part of the leaf is going to be dark. And when deer come here, kind of like hogs do, they just start turning them over, trying to get to the acorn. They flip them over. So you see all these upside down leaves here. It means they've been coming through here in the morning, picking off acorns and walking over to wherever they're walking to." I'm looking at him like, "Bro, this dude can barely speak proper English." But he can explain to me what an upside down leaf is. And he's been like the greatest asset I've ever had, because the amount of knowledge that him, his Uncle Marty, and his stepdad have, and what we learn around a bottle of Lord Calvary, just $15 whiskey, is more than I could get at any paid hunter guide that I'd be on.
Yeah.
Especially for whitetail anyway here in South Georgia. Like, those dudes are just doing it.
That's like, circling back, man. That's what I've loved the most, other than like the relationships on a personal level, but with the team and like what we've sort of accidentally built, from I'm being totally honest, it was never our intention early on, is that kind of knowledge that you get from some of these guys, like having, the guy on the ground who knows how to hunt that country. You can watch 100 YouTube videos, you can watch 100 of these hunting celebrities that go out and travel around and they learn a little bit of here and there, or they have an expert. Like when you're sitting there in camp or hunting next to these guys, And like, and I'm not afraid. Like, I just ask questions as much as I can. Like, just, hey, what are you looking at here? What do you see here? Why are we doing this decision? Like that sort of stuff. The worst is when you've got a bunch of dipshits that don't know what they're doing trying to hunt elk like we had in our camp, and then we're just arguing back and forth trying to figure out who's got the least worst plan. But but when you have that resource of those guys, I mean, and gals, it's invaluable, and it will shorten your learning curve about as fast as anything. And yeah, it's awesome. It's definitely made me a better hunter in the last 4 or 5 years.
Dude, I spent my last season. This past season, I really didn't get to hunt much because I got the new gig at Taurus, like I had gotten a promotion at Taurus, and I just full throttle whatever I'm doing. Like everything else becomes secondary. And unfortunately, the hunting took a backseat to that. I killed 2 bucks this season, so I wasn't mad at it, but I wish I could have done more. Like I dream about the fact that I didn't do more, or the mornings I woke up and I saw how nice and chilly with a slight little, you know, just mist going on. I was like, man, they're walking. They're walking. I'm sitting here in the office like this is stupid. This is the dumbest thing ever.
You killed a nice buck this past fall, right?
Yeah, he was right. I actually felt bad about shooting that buck. It was like one of the I see him and I regret having shot him.
Really?
I shot him. I shot him on a private property. Like now that I hunt and I know how to find my own deer, and I hunt WMAs, I get invited to hunt on private land all the time, and I always turn it down because I hate sitting on an office chair and just waiting for buck number 2 to walk out front, and we just dump them because it's like I can shoot targets, bro. It's not an issue. This isn't hard, but like when you don't know what to expect because you've just been looking at this area and you might have seen like this one basket 4 that's been cruising through the swamp bottom that takes you like a quarter mile to walk to, and the whole morning you're just cussing the whole way you're going over there because you're getting trapped in every briar that you can find. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
That's my favorite when you've just earned that hunt and then like you shoot something and then at the end of it you're just excited to see reflectors on your car. That moment of just like ultimate, like we did it. We did it. You see a reflectors on your car. So that buck, I went to go hunt on a property that one of my buddies had gone to the year before. His brother had passed away, and that was like the last place him and his brother had hunted. So I went there like to just support him and just be there with him to hunt. And his uncle, just this old Cuban dude, was just like, "Hey man, you're gonna hunt a stand. Like if you're on my property and you're my guest, I want you to be able to kill a deer. If it's bigger than what you've killed before, shoot it." I didn't really know what kind of potential this property had in terms of like size of bucks that they had there. So I'm sitting in the stand that they called Ron DeSantis. They have 2 stands on there. They have the Trump Tower and they have Ron DeSantis. Good old Cuban dudes, man. It's America all the way.
Die hard.
So die hard, bro. So I get dropped off at the stand by a golf cart. I walk like 10 yards, walk up like a perfect, wooden staircase, and inside like a $300 office chair. And I'm sitting there with my AR-10, and I'm literally like, same thing, feet kicked up, just on my phone. And I'm remembering that my buddy had sent me a picture of a buck that had walked on that stand the week previous on Thursday at 4:34, 4:35. I'm looking at my watch and it's like 4:15. So now I'm like, shit, what are the odds of this dude coming out at this time? So I'm like looking, I'm trying to see like where the camera was at. So I finally positioned the camera. I'm like, so that's the bush. And as soon as I'm looking at it and I like get behind my scope, homeboy walks out. Like just as I'm looking at him, he walks out. And like the one thing that the Cuban dude told me was like real sure. He was like, "Hey man, we're not meat hunters, we're trophy hunters. You shoot this dude in the shoulders. Like I'm not tracking this guy. Just make sure you shoot him. Bullets are cheap. Shoot him again if he looks like he's gonna get up." I was like, "Say less. I can shoot." You know. So this deer takes 2 steps into the biggest pile of corn you can imagine. Like I'm talking about, like I'll send you guys the pictures later. The picture of my deer on the ground, he's just completely surrounded in corn. I shoot him in the shoulders, he drops, and I put one more through his spine because he nudged. But to be honest, I just want to see how quick my follow-up shot on that AR-10 was. It was pretty wicked. Just like bam, bam, dumped him, and then after that, like a couple hours later, a couple of the other guys come out and they've got like the biggest bucks I've ever seen. Like if that buck would have come out while I was sitting in that stand, I would have for sure gotten the shakes. Like full Dorito head, chocolate, the biggest rack, like just giant rack. And I was just like, I would have never even imagined seeing a deer like that in South Georgia. But they have it in this property because of how they tailored them. And then I was like, man, I killed this buck 2 years too early.
Yeah.
He could have 100% gone, you know. I have another buck that I shot, you know, on public land that's just slightly bigger than or slightly smaller than the one that I had killed, but older, like rack size. He's smaller, but just face, skull features, everything. Like he's just an older buck all around. And that dude, like, I every time I see him, it cancels out the appreciation I don't have for the other one. So I just have them
Yeah.
next to each other.
Yeah, everybody's felt that before too, man. Like, you can't take the bullet back either, right? And I learned that lesson early on, and that makes you maybe take an extra second moving forward. But like, it's every deer is something to be proud of. And I remember Luke sent me a picture from a hunt he did down in Texas of a buck he killed. And I was like, "Fuck yes, dude, awesome buck!" Right? Because like I hunt up here in North Georgia, and like 120-inch deer is like that's a nice deer,
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and then he's like, hold on, and he sent me pictures of the other guys from the carts, and they were just these Texas like monsters, just like they went out for like just a kilometer on each side before going up or whatever. But like it's all something to be proud of because you still made the good shot, you still made the ethical shot, and you got that deer down, and it's still something to be proud of.
Yeah, I had a similar that exact story Carter's talking about is very similar, right? I went down. It was a last minute deal. There was a camp. I've been going to it for years now, but at the time, the president of my dad's company had been running it. It was a bunch of old vets, and David talked about trying to maybe get me down there for hogs that year, and the deer was a little more coveted, and I probably wasn't going to get a slot. Totally understood, right? Well, he texted me on Tuesday and was like, "Hey, if you can be here Thursday, there's a spot in camp for you." I looked at my wife, and my wife's a rock star, and she was like, "Go." Bought a plane ticket from Colorado Springs to Houston, flew down. One of the guys picked me up in a rental car. We roll up, right? So I'm talking to the landowner. I'm like, "Hey, like, what are the rules here? What am I looking for?" Like, they told us we could shoot bucks. He's like, "Yeah, like coal bucks," and I'm like, well, "What's a coal buck here?" Like, I have no idea. Like, I've primarily hunted in the East, and he was like, "I like eights." I'm like, "Okay." And I'm in this same deal, dude. I've never sat in like a tower blind before. Get to the tower
Yeah.
blind, got a Mr. Buddy heater, a quilt blanket, an office chair. I just gotten done getting my ass kicked on two Western hunts. One was mule deer with Carter, where we were just getting blizzard conditions, and then the other one was archery elk, where I just got my ass kicked. And so that was a nice change of pace. I was like, I like this right now, rather
Yeah.
than Mr. Buddy running. And then I'm looking at the same deal feeders, my first time ever hunting over corn. And at the time I didn't really know how I felt about it. Now I just hunt with how the people hunt wherever I'm hunting, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that I would probably run bait, but I don't have an issue with it if that's how the folks I'm hunting with are hunting. But um, this buck comes out and I look at him, his brow tines are like this long. Like, so to me, this is the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life. And I'm trying to decide, and like the guys have been telling me about this big 8-point that had been coming around out there, and I'm like, oh, this is him. And I'm trying to and he didn't even hit the feed. He like walked out to the feeder and then turned around. And he started walking, and he was getting ready to go back into the tree line. And so I didn't have a long time to deliberate, so just shot him. He dropped, and I'm like, yeah, watch him for a while. Like, he's dead. I get down, gut him out, drag him. I'm like looking at him, and I'm like, all right, he's a little smaller than I thought, but like it's a good 8-pointer. The dude who was driving us around drives up, looks at it, looks at me, and he's like, just kind of does this a couple of times, doesn't say anything. We load him up, and but then as we're going to load him, I see the coal buck that he shot, and this thing probably had a 23-inch spread. It was a coal, it was an 8-point. And I'm not exaggerating on the 23. I think it was like 22, 23. I mean, it was a wide, very, very wide deer. And yeah, very similar. And I felt bad because I actually me and a couple of the other guys shot similar basket 8s. And I think that's why we can't shoot bucks on that property anymore. But so I get it's kind of a mixed feeling where you're like, that was a 3.5-year-old deer. I think his either older brother or his dad had gotten killed because the same brow tines,
Yeah.
extra kicker off the left one. very similar racks, and I'm like, yeah, he could have grown into that. I probably shouldn't have shot that deer. But I mean, that's especially on those properties that are managed like that, it's hard, right? Like we're trying to manage my property a bit, but like, we're not dumping in a ton of back home, ton of feed and all this. We're just wanting to let bucks walk because we have the private land. But when you're hunting public, especially, like sometimes you just got to take what you can get. And when you're working for that, like I think the most proud deer I've ever killed was this tiny doe on Fort Campbell. It's my first year hunting with a bow, my first year hunting public land for deer, at least successfully. And I hunted damn near as hard as you did on your first, where I was going out as every opportunity I got. And I just was getting my ass kicked because I realized at that point I wasn't a hunter, I was a killer. I'd been hunting my family land my whole life. And so I didn't know I knew how they moved on that property, but I didn't know how to walk to another property and be able to read that sign, to see the leaves, to look at the topo, to look where those funnels are, be able to know how the thermals are acting, all that stuff. And so like I was just I was close to deer, but then I was with a bow, right? So I was always 100 yards away or 80 yards away outside of my range. And so, yeah, when I finally connected on that one doe, like that one, of all the bucks I've killed, like that doe is like probably the one that I'm the most proud of all the animals because of that work and that effort that I put into it.
Yeah, man.
But yeah. Chan, you're always looking to like push and grow and get better at whatever you're doing, either, I know you said you're not a competition shooter, but you do a lot of tactical training and with the hunting side of things. Any species on the western side of the state that you are on your short list, you want to get into it?
All of them. Actually, right now, what I'm going at is like I'm hitting the gym every day. I'm watching what I'm eating because I've gotten away with doing skinny guy stuff as a fat dude, but it's kind of forgivable here on the East Coast because like at the end of the day, I might just find like it might be a little bit harder stamina, but my life's at risk at no point. Like my life's never at risk. It doesn't matter how far I get into the woods out here, it's still accessible for the most part. If it's bad enough, I could drag myself out. But then when you head out west, it's not the same, right? Like at that point, I'm putting team members at risk. I'm putting myself at risk by trying to show up out west and performing without having the physical requirements to be able to perform out there. And like I'm a big proponent of that, whether it's with like guns and defense. Like I think everybody should have a gun. I think you should be extremely proficient with it to be able to preserve your life and the preservation of your loved ones. I think, that's the extreme version of personal responsibility that every American and every man should have. And then I apply that, and I haven't been applying it to the hunting side of it, where it's like I've neglected having the physical capabilities necessary to be able to do this efficiently. And instead, I've just dragged ass and suffered more than I need to when I could just work out and prepare myself beforehand.
No.
Like, why am I worried about whether I'm bringing my inhaler or not when I could just start prepping beforehand so that I'm not dying halfway through the trail, Or like my level of laziness is that I was willing to wake up 2 hours before daylight just so I'd have enough time to catch my breath to make it as deep and as far I want to get into the woods. Or I could just have the physical ability to do it and not have to worry about waking up so early.
Yeah.
To hammer that out, So it's things like that, like, or shopping for gear around my weight, which is stupid too. Like, why are you shopping for gear around your weight instead of tailoring something you can change immediately for that? And that's like just personal accountability, which is why when I first found your brand was probably like 3 years ago, I saw the Hunt Lift Eat and I saw the logo of the barbell with the bear skull and the arrow. I was like, man, that thing's freaking cool. But I hated the barbell in it. And I hate it because it ate away at me. Because I knew that wasn't me. Like I knew that I didn't understand that. I wasn't a gym bro. I wasn't doing that stuff. And I hated it. But I love the bear and the arrow. And then when I saw you guys again at GAO, I saw it again. I was like, I had been presented a couple opportunities to go out west. And I was like, man, I had already started working out and stuff some, but I still hadn't committed to it 100%. And when I saw that, I was like, this is it. Like I gotta tighten up. I gotta get this going. And then I meet Carrie. I meet freaking Carrie. Just an apex predator, bro.
Good way to describe Carrie.
Yeah.
I'm just like, shit. Not only can this man like deliberately physically hurt me if he wanted to, and I was very aware of that, right? But he's not the first person I felt that way around because of the gun industry and stuff. But then I was like, dude, this dude can run laps around me when we're hunting. Like he doesn't wake up tomorrow and worry about whether he's going to be able to physically perform because he tests himself every day. Like he'll complain about his back and his knees and whatever, but homeboy doesn't give a shit. Like homeboy's getting after it. Like,
Yeah.
and when I saw that, I was like, this is it. Like now, like what excuse do I have? I'm joining a brotherhood that's like the pinnacle and standpoint is excellence, right? Like we're trying to reach excellence to be able to be the best we can at whatever activity we're doing. Like this, the fish lift, eat, same thing.
Yep. Fuck yeah, dude. That's like such a healthy mindset, man. And I think you're already light years ahead of everybody who needs to take that aspect, get that aspect under control, because sometimes it's really hard for people to admit that and come to terms with it and then like start dealing with it. Like you're light years beyond. Like I could list off a bunch of names of folks that Luke and I know personally who need to address the same thing, but you're exactly right. For me, like my biggest shame comes from something you just mentioned too, like letting down your teammates. When I'm on a Western hunt with a group of guys, I do not want to be the weak link at all, right? I want to be the one who's at the forefront, helping however I can, whether that's spotting or packing out or, on this last antelope hunt, it was our first HLE antelope hunt that we did, which would love to get you on the next one, man. Helping guide and teach these new guys how to hunt out west. It was their first time, west of the Mississippi River. You don't want to be that weak link, man. And there's a number of different reasons why that's super important. Hunting being one of those reasons, but also like longevity in life and mental health, and being proficient in everything that you pursue in your everyday life as well. So I think that's awesome, man. And I saw you're setting personal records on deadlifts and all that stuff now, man. So that's freaking awesome. So kudos to you, dude.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
No, where I really love like the team, like, yeah, I started this whole deal, but I'm not the pinnacle of any of it. I'm definitely not the best hunter. I used to be pretty damn strong. I'm not near as strong as I used to be. I'm not as fit as I used to be. And that was like, we were talking about before we jumped on the call, like how I haven't drank in 4.5 months. The real like catalyst for that was like I stepped on the scale after Christmas. It's the fattest I've ever been in my life, or weighed the most and the fattest. You talked about the hunting gear, like all my shit wasn't fitting. So it's like I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, I'm gonna have to buy new gear. And it was like the exact same thing where it's like, or dumbass, you could just cut the fucking weight and quit making the excuses that you're too busy with the wife and the kids and the business and all this shit, because it's always going to be there, right? I can rationalize my way into anything, right? Like, oh, I've got all these other priorities, I can't go work out right now. And then it just became like, all right, what you can stop drinking, right? Because that's not helping you on the business side, it's not helping you on the personal development side, and it's not helping you on the fitness side, right? So that was I did that. Ate right. Like, yeah, my workout schedule was ass, but it was like, I know I can get my steps in. I can get a little bit of something in. I just got hit in the face with a bug. Tennessee in the summer. Sorry about that at night. But yeah, I can control these controllables, and I can get back down into my hunting gear. I can buy my new gear in the size that I should be buying it, like all these, little things, and make sure I'm not the weak link on those hunts, because like on that fourth rifle elk hunt, like I was not in the physical shape I should have been in. Now I've got so much experience walking with a pack on my back that I can just brute force my way through anything. But at the same time, it's like, if we had to pack elk out, I would have probably been a bit of a liability. I would have I was never going to sit down, right? Like if the guys were going, like I would die before that happened because I'm just stubborn and stupid. But like, that was like, I can't be a leader in this company and not be that direct representation. So it's an accountability thing for myself. And then that's what it is across the board. When you look to your left and your right, and you got guys like Kerry, who's got a broken back, fucked up hips, his knees are shot, and he's still out there every day getting after it. He's got intestinal issues from a bacterial infection he got in Africa. So he can't eat hardly anything. So he eats like this really strict animal-based diet. And you're like, well, if he can fucking do it, why can't any of us, right? And you have those guys that we surround ourselves with, that I think is so, it's fucking important, and that's what we need as men and women. I mean, it's definitely applies to our female members, but I think men especially feel that, where like I just got done reading Gates of Fire for like the 6th time. I don't know if you've ever read that book, but it's about the Spartans at Thermopylae, and the whole book. It's just every time I've read it like 6 times, and like every time I read it, I get something else out of it. And like that was like the big thing when I was reading it this time, was just about the brotherhood, and like you're doing it to the guys to your left and your right, and it's like at the end they send all the other Greeks away, and the Spartans are gonna get ready, and they know they're gonna die, right? They're gonna hold the line so the rest of the Greeks can get out. And one of the dudes had gone blind earlier in the fight, and they'd sent him back to the rear, and he came up with his squire leading him. He was gonna fight and die with his guys blind, right? And I'm sitting there and I'm like, that's who we fucking are as men. Like that's what we've got to be at that level with. And it's hyperbolic when we compare it to hunting, right? And like our life in 2024, but like that same mentality, like it's in our genetics and it's within our DNA, and we can have on a lesser scale that same type of loyalty to each other, accountability to each other, pride in what we're doing, and have that camaraderie that really pushes us and propels us forward. And it's something that's really been on my mind a lot over the past few months, and through the highs and the lows of building this entire thing. So I everything you just said really resonated with me. Sorry to go off on a tangent there, but
No, dude, you're good. The what's it called? Like, it goes back to that quote, like how you do one thing is how you do everything.
yep.
So like whether it's hunting, it's business, your regular day-to-day job, your relationships, like the way you do those things is how you will do all those things. And it's like, yeah, I might have that, pain is temporary, pride is forever type attitude to like overcome pain and struggle or whatever and get through it. Or I can be more efficient and get things done correctly, right? Because like you said, you're either an asset or a liability. And especially up in the mountains, like if you're doing it by yourself, then you're just irresponsible, right? Especially when you haven't like set anything up beforehand, you haven't trained beforehand, you haven't done anything towards it, and you just expect it to show up and do something that has cost the life of many men who are probably greater and better hunters than we were. And our arrogance takes us to like walk out there and just be like, let's see if we can pull this one off. Like we owe it to the game and we owe it to ourselves to be better. Just be better.
100%, definitely. Well, this was awesome, man. And I don't want to wrap it up quite yet because I want to talk about Taurus. So let's pivot a hard left turn here, just to catch it on the end of this. So let's we've been chatting back and forth on some of the stuff that Taurus has in the works, but I really want to go. I used to work in the gun industry when I was younger. I worked at a gun range, a gun store, and Taurus was kind of the cheaper option. What I really noticed here over the last, I don't know, 6-10 years is that Taurus has really been stepping the game up across the board with their polymer pistols. I mean, everything just seems to be going in a completely different direction of where the brand kind of was. And I think that there's still some folks that probably kind of think about it in those terms. So like, just kind of give us like a macro level of what Taurus is doing, both on the more tactical side with carry polymer options, the full size, like the quality shifts that we've been seeing and the innovation on that end. And then let's lead that into kind of Taurus moving into hunting rifles and all that.
So Taurus, once upon a time, probably like 12 years ago, had a terrible reputation for quality control, right? Our quality control wasn't the best. And mostly because we were importing products and then putting them right out on the shelf the exact same way that we got it. And there was a really big disconnect between us and our Brazilian counterparts. Fast forward to Taurus today, we literally fly their engineers here regularly, and our engineers travel over there regularly. They finally get to understand the gun culture in America, because in Brazil, gun culture is not really a thing. Like they see us riding around with body armor and guns in our car, and to them it's crazy, right? They've never experienced anything like that, or even getting chances to take courses to like apply the firearms that these guys are designing. They've never really seen application for them, so they're just designing things to design things. The other thing we did was that we brought inspections in-house. So whenever firearms come into the U.S., they go through a U.S. inspections process inside the building, and those firearms get checked and they get quality control before they go out to our customer. And it's been the biggest pivotal point. And then the message that we want to get across is cheap doesn't mean what's it called? Not inefficient, but unreliable. Right? Just because something is inexpensive, or the phrase is inexpensive doesn't equal cheap. Right? our thing is, like I said before, my biggest message and the reason why I think I've been put on this earth is to arm as many people as possible. I think it's important for everybody to have a gun. It's the most it's the biggest equalizer. It's a nuclear option. Doesn't matter if you're 8 or 80 years old. If you have a gun, you're a decisive factor in any fight. You know, so and it's the biggest way to be able to gain personal responsibility. So with our firearms, I find that a lot of people can't drop a month's rent or a car payment, on a firearm, whether it's $500-$600. You can pick up a Taurus for $200-$300, still have all the aftermarket support that any of these other brands would have, and you have the ability to be able to protect your own life and the lives of your loved ones, and trust that we're making a product that will do so. Lately, we've been expanding into the outdoor industry, which we had touched before with like our big bore revolvers and like 44 mag, 454, or Raging Bull series, and we kind of tailored it up. And the Judge,
I remember when the Judge came out, man. That was like the one Taurus that we could not keep on the shelf. That thing sold like crazy. I love the Judge.
That was one of the ones that put us on the map. To this day, it's still a flagship item for us, and it's a legacy gun at the same time. And I use it all the time because there's nothing more humbling than trying to shoot a snake with a 9mm and a red dot at 2 feet. That is the most humbling part of your life. You shoot that thing and you'll feel like the worst shooter in the world because you've never practiced your holdover at that distance pointing at the ground. Like, it's just the stupidest thing ever.
For those that aren't familiar, a Taurus Judge is it's a revolver that shoots 410 shotgun shells and 45 Colt, which is pretty sweet to have the option to have a traditional pistol cartridge and a shotgun shell within a pistol. Like, it's and you can run with double-aught buck. It's rough to shoot, but you can put it in there. So it's a sweet little pistol.
100%. And then we expanded more on the 410 45 long Colt side of things. We also own Rossi and Heritage. Heritage is mostly known for like single action type 22 and rimfire pistols. And then on the Rossi side, it's like lever actions, revolvers, and like rimfire rifles. But recently we added a gun called a Brawler, which is literally a 9.5-inch 410 45 long Colt single shot break action.
Come on.
And it's under like $250. Like, it's super inexpensive. It's like the perfect deer camp gun because you can throw a 410 shell in there and then have just a bandolier with 410 45 long Colt. And when we're out on the farm or on the property, we're using the 410 to shoot rattlesnakes. And if we walk up on a feeder and there's pigs under it, we'll throw a 45 long Colt and then just dump them. And it's under $300, so you're not afraid about beating it up. You get into a Judge and you could be anywhere from $350 all the way up to $600. But for that gun, sub $300, you've got a duty gun that you can rely on. But just to expand on our hunting side more, we also came out this year with our Taurus Expedition, which is we're offering a bolt action rifle for the first time ever. We're super excited about it because it's our CEO is a big time hunter. Brett Voorhees, that dude spends a lot of time of his year out in the woods, and especially now he discovered Africa. And he tells us it's the most majestic thing anyone could ever experience, especially as a hunter, that we appreciate that kind of stuff and appreciate animals. It's worth every penny to go over there. So that dude's been working on these projects he's really like defined how the direction the Taurus is moving forward. Most of our staff are hunters and shooters too. So whenever we're working on a project, we're really tailoring these guns specifically for the end user because we are the end user. So we're all like, look, this is stupid. This doesn't make sense. I don't need a QD mount there. I don't need these random things engineers put on guns because they think are cool. Like we tailor them down to what it needs to be, which makes them to be more affordable for the customer because we've removed all the extras that don't need to be there, and then feature rich because we're looking at the features that we'd want right off the shelf for a gun.
That's freaking awesome, man. And to Carrie's credit, again, the first time you and I got linked up after you and Carrie met, you shot me a message, I think, and you were like, "Hey, dude, call me." And I was like, "All right." And Carrie was like, "Hey, I just met this awesome dude. He joined the team. He's with Taurus." And I was putting together our first annual clay shoot for Hunt Lift Eat this past March. and you and I jumped on a call, and I knew right away I was being interviewed just as much as I was figuring out who Chan is, and you understood the big picture of what was going on, and you alluded to the expedition, and y'all were kind enough to donate 2 guns as raffle prizes for the shoot there, which was super generous of you and Taurus on your behalf. And you guys donated the 10 mil, the TH10, and the GC3, a 9 mil.
Yeah,
awesome. And I've stayed in contact with both the people who won those guns, and my buddy's dad won the 9 mil, and he sent me a picture of his dad, and he took his wife to, and they're taking gun classes now, and they were not firearms people before, talking about, you said you were put on this earth to do just that, and now they're taking firearms classes and doing shooting classes and tactical training and all sorts of stuff. And I thought you'd want to hear that, man. But and then you and I talked about like big picture stuff with HLE, and about how my passion is mentoring hunters and getting people involved in the outdoors, man. And you guys were coming out with this line of rifles, and we were talking big picture stuff, man. But I've been nothing but impressed by you and the company, and great feedback from those who got those pistols put in their hands, man. So kudos to you, and yeah, we're thrilled to be affiliated with you guys, man.
when it comes to like helping you guys, the biggest thing for us is like at the end of the day, all those guys that were at that clay shoot, all the guys that hunt, they're somebody's gun guy. I'm not interested in selling to the already gun owner, because as gun owners, we have our biases. We're already predisposed to the brands that we want to purchase. Some of us bought one gun 15 years ago, and that's what we're sticking to. Like I don't need another gun. This is plenty for me. But when I get the opportunity to be able to have that relationship with a brand like ours, like what we have going on, or to support an event like that, it gives me the ability to be able to, for one, show the guy who's there, like, hey, I'm not afraid about you using my gun because I trust my gun. I carry a Taurus every single day of my life, you know? And then they can then turn around and talk to like the gentleman who got that gun for the first time. He shot me an email. He's like, hey man, uh my wife is thinking about taking gun classes, and
Right.
I don't want to like lose this,
Yeah.
lose this energy we got moving forward. Is there any way we can fast track this? I was like, dude, I got you. Say less. Overnight at that thing to him. I was like, let's get your wife out in the range.
Hell yeah.
Like, I heard this quote today because it was like I heard it, and it's funny because I had just given a seminar this weekend on the right carry for every occasion, and this was like the one thing that I wish I could have included, which was all the responsibilities you choose not to shoulder will be taken up by tyrants and used against you.
I like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm gonna get that tatted on me. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. And then on the hunting side, we get to be able to be, especially with what you guys are trying to do, trying to help new hunters get out in the woods and stuff. We're going to get to be able to have that memory with those people. They're going to be able to say that they killed their first animal with a Taurus expedition or a Rossi LWC or whatever it is that we provide you guys for you guys to be able to use, to be able to support. Like they'll remember that forever, And you can't pay advertisement like that, man.
No, not at all, man. That's what people remember, man, and that makes total sense now. And like I get it, like the passion and the understanding behind that. And the expedition's chambered in a phenomenal round right now. It's just in a 308 currently, right?
308 and 6.5 Creedmoor.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. That's perfect.
Yeah, I'm excited. What we got on the docket with some of the courses that we're trying to build. We're going to run our first one, I think, this year, and then expand it. And yeah, be running some of the expeditions. And then the other thing I wanted to kind of announce on this, and we haven't talked about it yet, Carter, is Hero Week's coming up quick. And for those that aren't familiar, I'll kind of break it down. We've done this for what, 4 years now, something like that. It all blurs together, but we do take Murph with Memorial Day, and we can just kind of expand on it. Right, this is obviously something that's near and dear to me. I've just getting out of the military after 11 years, and 7 days, 7 hero wads. We try to honor those guys and tell their stories, and then we use it as a fundraiser for a veteran nonprofit that we're supporting. And so right now I can't announce the one because I got to finalize the details, but it's a pretty kick-ass nonprofit if that's the one we go with. And if not, we'll use one of the ones we've used in the past. But Taurus is going to come on as a sponsor. So we wanted to kind of sweeten the pot for everybody and drive up even more interest and engagement. So we're going to do a giveaway a day for everybody that's participating in the challenge. And so Taurus is going to toss in a pistol on that, which I think is super cool. So not only can you support an awesome cause, you can get your ass kicked, doing a personal challenge on 7 days, 7 hero wides to honor our fallen. And you might even win a kick-ass pistol and a pile of other cool gear that's going to be coming from some of our brand partners that we'll announce here soon. So I appreciate that, Shannon. When the support means a ton, with a company at our level and our stage where, we're still learning, we're still building, we got some momentum, but we're still not there yet for you guys to jump in and want to partner and support us means a lot. So thank you.
Again, we appreciate everything you guys are doing. And like you said, that initial conversation we have did seem a bit like an interview, just because I had heard Carrie's talk, and I went home and again, just like as a former entrepreneur, my mind took off at what the capabilities and possibilities of this were. And I was like, I just want to make sure we're all tracking. I want to make sure that we're all having the same vision, that we're all thinking the same thing. And when the second I talked to Carter and then I got to speak to you, Luke, I was like, yeah, no, this is it. This is a real deal. And I got the opportunity, I don't know what it was, to be able to meet you guys and be able to be here at the ground level. And I was like, let's do whatever we can to make this happen.
Well, we appreciate it, man. It's I'm excited. I'm excited for the future, and I love the direction that Taurus is going, honestly, because like I said, with my background in that space, it was always like it's almost good, 1911s. There's always it was a good bang for your buck. 1911s when I think it was a Beretta, or not a Beretta, one of the factories that Taurus had bought.
BT92.
Yeah, and then had put had started cranking out a good budget 1911, but the polymers just were not up to snuff, and it's been really cool seeing the innovation. And then when we started talking, I'd seen some stuff, and I went and I got my hands, and I haven't shot one yet, but I've been looking at the feel, and I'm like, this doesn't the fit, finish, everything is just totally different from where it was. I don't know, when I worked in a gun store, it's probably 20 years ago now, so it's been a hot minute, but
yeah,
15 years ago, yeah. So yeah, man, I'm excited. I think we're gonna do some really cool shit together, and I'm even happier and stoked that you're part of the team, because some of our partners, they kind of jump in, but they don't come in for the full experience, and you coming in this way makes it even better because you can be immersed in it and what we're trying to build, and you're an asset. You're in the chat, you're talking to the guys, you're seeing it. We're gonna get you out to some of these events. I know you're a busy guy, but that's cool, and that's something that I'm really excited about.
Heck yeah, man.
Got anything to wrap us up, Carter?
No, man. Proud to know you, man. Glad we connected. This has been a good 2024 so far, Chan. So looking forward to it, man, and looking forward to pulling the trigger on either some hogs in South Georgia or Florida or wherever. And I'll be in your ear telling you to put in for some preference points in a couple Western states and see if we can't help you scratch that itch, man. I'd love to reciprocate however we can.
Heck yeah, man. Let's get after it.
Yeah, we got to get you in Wyoming.
2024, great.
We got to get you getting preference points in Wyoming for sure, because that'll be our new home, like we talked about. So,
yeah. All right, y'all. This has been a great podcast, man. I hope this is what you guys wanted, and that we continue to grow the team.
Perfect.
I'm all about it. Let's do it.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Chan. Thanks for your time, dude. Luke, always good to see you. Listeners, as always, appreciate the hell out of you guys. We'll talk to you next week.